Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Before we begin and to hear from our speaker today, let's go around the room and say our names. It's our tradition. I'll go ahead and begin if I may. My name is Roy.
My name is Henry Rubinowitz.
Douglas Hall.
My name is Michael.
Anthony.
I'm Kay.
I'm Wally.
I'm Joe.
Richard.
Jose.
I'm Michael.
Richard Azzolini.
My name is Joe.
I'm Tom Bruein.
My name is Jerry. I'm Bob.
My name is Brian. My name is Tage. I'm Ed Eng. My name is Paul Shepard.
I'm Jack.
My name is Cass.
Michael.
Dan.
Harry.
Right here? Okay.
My name is Harley.
Jeremy.
Peter.
Tom.
Russell. My name is David. Leonor.
I'm Michael.
I think that's it. This month of June has been a very special one for us here at the Gay Buddhist Fellowship because every weekend in June so far, it's been a member of our Sangha that has come forth to teach, and today is no different. Joe Rodriguez is a lifelong spiritual student and has been influenced by the Roman Catholic Church, A Course in Miracles, and Buddhist spiritual traditions. He practices in bringing an open heart, a clear mind, and a felt sense to everyday life. He studies under Fu Schroeder, a senior Zen priest at Green Gulch Farm. Joe's topic today is Equanimity in an Election Year, some hard-earned lessons from a committed political activist and Zen practitioner. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's always good to speak in this gay house of Dharma. It's always a great feeling. I was reflecting that I've been coming here off and on for 15 years, and it's become my home in a way. So thank you. This topic today is something that's deeply personal and something I struggle with a lot. And I'm here as much as a teacher as I am a student. I'm gonna motor through my sort of prepared remarks, and I'm gonna throw a number of ideas and stories at you, but I want to hear what you have to say back. So I'm gonna allow for like 20 minutes of questions and answers because I think it'll be really rich and lively. But I'm gonna stir the pot to get us going. Two things I want to cover just up front, and I think I was talking to some of the guys in my meditation group. I have a Monday night meditation group, and Roy, David, and Richard are part of that. And I think someone asked me what equanimity meant, and so I gave like not the most crisp answer. So I actually looked it up on dictionary.com. I know that's a best source, but mental calmness, composure, evenness in temper, especially in a difficult or loaded situation. So let's just keep that in mind as we go through the topic today. And I think also I just need to give you a little bit of biographical information about myself. It might be helpful to put my words in context. I'm definitely a political nerd. When I was 8 years old, I asked my mom to take me to Democratic Party headquarters because I wanted a Bobby Kennedy house sign And I got I saw all these pamphlets there, and then I asked her to drop me off at the grocery store on the way home, and I gave them out to people coming in. So a little bit of a, it's been a big tradition for my family, being involved in politics. I worked on the Clinton, Kerry, and Obama campaigns, and social activism has always been something very important to me. My great-grandfather was organized coal miners in Spain, and right after the Bolshevik Revolution. And he, my other great-uncle was a state senator from New Mexico. And my mom was started Head Start in the area. So social activism and politics have always played an important part. In fact, we had Profiles in Courage, John F. Kennedy's books, on our coffee table about great political heroes. So that's sort of the tradition I come from. And in the last 20 years, I've been really focusing on the Dharma. As Roy mentioned, the Catholic Church and Course in Miracles led me to sort of meditation, which led me to the Buddhist path. And I've been very engaged by the ideas of Buddhism, particularly the ideas of compassion, equanimity, and non-attachment, especially that last non-attachment. And these are principles I try to apply in my daily life. Well, on one hand, how do I reconcile these two opposites in ways? Political activism, really caring about the result, putting myself in, debating passionately about the topics of the day, standing up for gay people, and feeling open-heartedness, a compassion, and a non-attachment. It's been a real struggle, and some of the guys in my group can attest to that. And I think this year, the reason I wanted to talk about this topic, I think this year is going to be a very, very noisy and difficult political year. And I think we can just see that Mitt Romney's super PACs are raising hundreds of millions of dollars. There's going to be a lot of negative ads. We're in the middle of a severe recession. There's a lot of fear in the country. And for me personally, as I read as I sometimes read the latest story on birtherism, or when I'm reading about the various governors trying to discourage voter turnout and doing all sorts of things to discourage that in places like Florida, or people taking the right of women to freedom of choice away from them in places like Virginia, and all sorts of very invasive laws. And also just hearing about people taking the rights away of gay and lesbian people, which is very close to home. These are really painful things for me, and they're scary. And raise your hand if you can relate to any of some of the things I do. All right. But as my practices have evolved, it's really influenced the way I think about and practice politics. And I wanted to share some of that with you guys today. In fact, I needed this Dharma talk to sort of codify this. How am I doing this differently? Because I think I'm a little, some of the guys in my group like Richards have seen me. I think 4 years ago I was a lot more anxious and angry. And I think the circumstances actually at the time 4 years ago were actually better for us in terms of the causes that I considered. So I'm going to spend some time talking about some of the ideas that I've borrowed shamelessly from my teachers and my families and my family and friends. So let's go. The first principle I want to talk about in terms of cultivating equanimity is practicing right understanding. And I'm going to build on the Buddha's definition and some of the traditional Dharmic teachings with that. My teacher, Fu Schroeder at Green Gulch Farm, one of the things that we've talked about this a lot, and she's a very strong activist too, and is one of the things about human beings is we tend to organize ourselves into teams. around a perceived or shared interest. And if you think about it, some of the great, and then we have our team and other teams emerge, and then rivalries emerge. And think about some of the great rivalries from ancient times to the present. The Athenians versus the Spartans. In Spanish times, or in the 20th century, the Republicans against the nationalists or fascists. In more modern times, the Indians versus the Pakistanis. Or even on just a fun level, the Cardinals versus the Bears. Rooting for our tribe or our team is just a natural part of human nature. And I think the same thing applies to political parties. This is basic human need for belonging and identity with a group around a particular set of ideas. It's being part of a club. There's a feeling of warmth and comfort. Hey, I'm with my people. And one of the things I think that's really difficult in this election year and more in this modern time is social scientists have proven that when we're part of a group, we tend to edit the information we take in to reinforce and agree with our worldview. So I sort of noticed, and I was just seeing this the other day. I tend to be very harsh on what I consider the GOP failures and intrusions into my liberties. And then I was just reading yesterday, Obama's campaign manager, I forget his first name, but his last name is Messina. There was this controversy on Huffington Post showing him that when he ran a Democratic senator's campaign in Montana, I believe, Max Baucus, they went after a third-party candidate that was going to potentially take some of their vote, and they used a thinly veiled gay attack. That he's just different. This guy was different. And I was just thinking, I saw that headline as I was preparing for this talk, and I think it's just so easy to sort of be easy on our side, on my team and even myself, and judge other people more harshly. I think the other part of human nature that I want to talk about in terms of right understanding is that we tend to make another group or person what I call the other. And I think this is a very dangerous and loaded part of our psyche. This other, is what I think causes a lot of suffering. It's this idea that we are separate from other human beings. And I recently just got back from a trip to Poland, and I had an opportunity, a really powerful opportunity to see the other to the extreme. And that's when I went to Auschwitz, where 1.2 million people lost their lives. In addition to about 800,000 Jews, about 200,000 Soviets, 200,000 Poles, and Jews and Gypsies and gays in that mix. And I was wondering, as I was walking around this place, German culture and civilization has this real rich and strong tradition. How did, even in the 20th century, did this modern people create this lie and then sort of execute on this lie? How did they create taking the Jewish people and making so much of the other that they could exterminate them? And one of the things that was really interesting as we went through the tour of Auschwitz which was a struggle and beautiful and really dark, all those things sort of together, was our tour guide kept on mentioning how the Nazis did everything to dehumanize the Jews and the other concentration camp people. So, for example, just really small things, like they would they would give them, like really tall people, really small camp uniforms, and really really short people, really large ones, so they look almost clownish. And they would let them only go to the restroom twice a day, so often they had messed on themselves. Just systematic dehumanization, trying to create this other that you could actually even exterminate and abuse. So for me, it's really important for me to watch this part of my mind that creates separation between me and my perceived political opponents. And there's a more recent understanding of, I think, of right understanding, or there's another way of looking at right understanding applied to politics. We actually know from brain research that brains of conservatives and liberals respond to the same stimuli in different ways. So I see an event, my political peer sees an event, conservative peer sees an event, our brains actually process that in different ways. And one of Tom Bruein turned me on to this guy. He's a professor at UVA. His name is Jonathan Haidt. And he found across all human cultures, and he studied from like Finland to Fiji, liberals tend to value fairness, avoidance of harm, and individual expression over all other values. Now, conservatives, they also value fairness and avoidance of harm. They're a little less on the individual expression, but they value authority, purity, and group cohesiveness as important values. So actually, conservatives they value more things that liberals tend to value 3 things, And Haidt makes the point, and there's a TED Talk on this. If you Google Jonathan Haidt, you'll find it, that society needs both mindsets. Liberals or progressives tend to be great change agents, innovators, and dynamic forces. They tend to adopt things and change society. Conservatives tend to provide stability, rules of engagement, a sense of tradition and order. And, he underscores, he talks about how, everyone knows on some level, and anyone who's ever gone camping or tried to organize a group of people, we need each other to move society ahead in a sane and stable way. And I think the question is, how do you balance those forces out? And where do you find the midpoint? A few years ago, an old acquaintance came back into my life as a business client and eventually a friend. And when this friend came back and we worked with his firm, my business partner and I had to deal with the fact that he was a gay Republican. And he had very conservative views, and it led itself to a very challenging and often rocky friendship. But through that 2 years of getting to know him, we learned a lot about each other and a lot about, I think, each other's brand of politics. I mean, on some level, it's just like a gay Republican. I don't get this, and my group has heard me talk about this for a long time. So, but what I understood was this sense of tradition. He came from an old Southern family that has an importance on money and status. It's really important. A need to be accepted by his society and particularly his family. And one of the things that he did for me, and I have a blog that he challenged me on. He says, for all your Buddhism and everything, you're saying some pretty hateful and things about conservatives on your blog. Now, I didn't consider them hateful, but I did when I really looked at them. I saw the intention was to make fun. It was really not There was some harm in that intention, and even sometimes probably ways of getting back at him, in our sort of dialogue. And I think, through our exchange, and so sort of lessening, like, you're less of the other and you're closer to my brother, he realized that, maybe being a gay Republican wasn't the best thing. Now he's a gay libertarian. I'm not sure that's that much, but it's a difference. And he became really critical of the GOP and its homophobia, and has given money and has become a change agent in conservative circles. I think he understands more my value of fairness and individual expression, why those things are more important. I understand him. But, we were able to sort of look beyond our differences and see our humanity and our shared aspirations for this country are actually quite simple. The way of getting there is different, but the aspirations are the same. Another thing I want to talk about, and that I found to be very helpful in addition to right understanding, is just being mindful, which is really the heart of the Buddhist practice for me, certainly the Zen practice. In my group last week, I think I can say this, we were talking about what is practice to you and what does it mean in meditation. And for me, it's this container, this safe container, almost like, industrial grade furnace, to witness the rantings and ravings of my mind without causing any additional harm to myself or to other people. And sometimes I go into my meditation group and I'm feeling a little crazy. Or the week I'm worried about something, or I'm just feeling this sense of ennui. And what I use my meditation practice for when I sit on this cushion is, in some ways, is a way of letting my ego off the leash and just watching it. In addition to my breath, I just bring whatever is going on in my experience with me. And I think in a political year, this is especially important to do. And one of the things I noticed, is how I use it. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I had just read, just before my Monday night meditation group, I had read about this 16-year-old Hispanic kid, I think it was in either Washington State or Oregon, who had killed himself because he was gay, he was depressed. And he killed himself, and this story just pierces me to my soul. He killed himself because he had been bullied for 2 or 3 years, and he was able to handle that. But his younger brother was now a freshman, and they were starting to harass him in the same way because they perceived his older brother to be gay. And just the anguish of that story was really hard for me to hold. And I walked over to my meditation group, which is about a 40-minute walk from my house. And I arrived there really angry. And we had a conversation about it. And these guys know me pretty well. I was angry and I was upset, and we were talking about gay Republicans, and I wanted to beat them all up. And I was really angry that anyone could do this to a kid, or be one of the institutional pillars of homophobia. So one of the things that we do, like we do here, is we sit for 30 minutes. And so I sat in that meditation, I struggled. And here's like I'm meditating, I feel like a sham, I have all this anger. I actually was angry at myself for being so angry. And I sat in that meditation, and when we got done, we all sort of come out of meditation and we start talking about the topic du jour. And what I noticed was I still had feelings. I still had that compassion and even that sense of outrage. But the edge was off. that edge that was making me say some probably unskillful things, maybe affecting my karma before the meditation. After the meditation, I was able to hold the topic and my pain and my desire to do something about it in just a more profound way. And I think that's a really important thing for us to remember as we go through 2012. Sometimes after Fox News or Rachel Maddow, it's good to sit on the cushion. And it really can be a place. It's not to get to wash it out and make it go away, but it's maybe to take the edge off in a ways that we can actually do something constructive with it. I think another way of being mindful and connected to what I just talked about was exercising skillful behavior. One of the things, at the end of this talk, I'll tell you about my blog. I blog a lot. I usually blog 5 posts a day around politics, gay rights, and other things that I find interesting, sports. And when I'm really upset, I tend to write. I have to watch myself. I can really write an angry post or send out a mean Twitter tweet. But one of the things I've noticed by reading some of the other political blogs, where there's a lot of comments, they make a point, and then the community comments, it gets really crazy in those comment sections. And one of the things I notice is, especially in the gay blogs, and I know this from my own self, is there's a lot of hurt being a gay person in society. There's a lot of discrimination. We've gotten used to it, but in some things that really, I think, prick that wound and make it even more painful. And there's a tendency for us to just rip each other to shreds in those comment sections. And I don't want to be that person. Because I'd rather use my energy in a more constructive way. So it's really affected the way I blog and tweet. And one of the things, when I'm feeling like sort of sorry for myself, like, oh God, gay people have it really tough, I do think of the Dalai Lama and other people who have suffered under great injustice. And he talks about the Chinese have been his greatest spiritual teachers. And what I think he's really talking about there is like, how do I work with them? How do I have my feelings and my concerns about the Tibetan people, and my anger about it, but how do I constructively work with them to protect my religion and my people? A little bit closer to home, I think for this audience, is I've been also inspired by Frank Kameny. Frank Kameny was one of the great LGBT activists, probably unequal with Harvey Milk, but just lesser known. He was a DC-based activist. He started the Mattachine Society. And one of the things, the great things about Frank that I love about his life and the stories, and I think he died about a year ago or so, was he engaged and did a lot of letter writing to politicians and to institutions, the Catholic Church, and he never made it personal, mean, or angry. He was very respectful and at the same time called them on their things. In fact, there's a great story, I think, the psychologists in the room probably know this better than me, but I think it was at an APA convention. He kept on forcing this issue that we need to declassify homosexuality as an illness. And he led the charge, and he led it out in a very direct but nonviolent way. And I think, wow, that's just really cool, being able to do that. And he was effective. The last thing I want to talk about, because I want to get this rolled up in 5 minutes, is taking right action by never giving up on love and other people. And let me explain what I mean by that. I really hold this belief that some people do change, and I want to keep open that possibility. They change their minds. I know in my own lifetime I've seen people change their minds about women, race, and when I read history, they've changed their minds around things like slavery and other things. So I want to hold out that possibility and not make people into this solid other, this other thing that's unchanging. So one of the things I've done in my own personal behavior is I don't call people racist, homophobes, or sexist anymore. Sort of like doubling down on their fear with a noun, to me, sort of like ossifies things and creates more separation and doesn't allow an opportunity to dialogue. Instead, I try to call out their behavior and dialogue with them. And sometimes I do say, hey, I take offense to what you're saying now. That is a homophobic thing. That is, and I explain to them what homophobia means. Or that's a racist thought. Like I had this friend I was telling you, like that whole birtherism to me is just racism. And the reason I do this is I feel like a bad fever, sometimes people's delusions break and go away. I've seen that in my own life. I have delusions all the time. And they send me off in different directions. But sometimes something happens, or maybe even nothing happens. That delusion disappears, and I'm a different person on that in some way. And I want to hold that out for other people. And in my lifetime, I've seen people like George Wallace going from a segregationist to embracing black people. Lee Atwater, who developed the Willie Horton ads for George Bush the First, towards the end of his life when he had pancreatic cancer, apologized for all of it. And I've even seen in my own life, my parents going from being anti-gay to being the most supportive people I could imagine for their 2 gay sons. And, with that sensitivity, I also feel sometimes we have to be bold and express our anger like we did during ACT UP and trying to get the drug medications we needed to treat and hopefully eventually one day cure HIV. But I think the thing that I'm always amazed by when I talk to people who are very active and believe in civil disobedience, the people that I think do it best say the key is you do all the tactics, but you have a calmness and a peace in your heart. It allows you to just be more mobile. And you're actually just bringing that sort of level of civil disobedience to the decision makers and power makers in a way to get their attention. But you're not trying to cause them harm. And I have a story about this that's personal in my own life. I was on a date with this guy who's a psychiatrist, and we were at the Clay Theater in the Fillmore District, and we were waiting for our very popular film to start, and there was a line outside, and there was this gay guy leaning against this car, fancy car, and sort of drunken frat boy type, that's all, just comes across the street and sees this guy leaning against his car, and he goes ballistic and starts wanting to punch him. And I think the guy had been drinking, and this guy who was leaning against the car was just sort of shocked by it, and he didn't really mean any harm. And what I was watching there, is the variety of different reactions. My reaction, which I can't believe I still have this reaction, is I want to antagonize the frat guy. I was pissed off. I mean, I realized in some ways I was projecting onto him the bullies of my life, the straight bullies of my life, taking on this gay guy. And this friend of mine, who I was dating at the time, he got right between the two parties, which took a lot of nerve. And he tried to talk to them both, but particularly the drunk guy, and he calmed him down. And he was like putting himself in harm's way. He wasn't inflating the situation, but he wasn't running from it. And I think that's a great metaphor for being a political activist or being involved. It's being right in the middle of it, doing what you can. And I was just really touched by how his mindfulness and how that led to his behavior really diffused the situation. And I think about that sometimes when I get all politically heated up. And just lastly, I'd say, for me, being politically active is like being in any close relationship. It's messy. It's emotional. You need to be okay with your heart being broken. It's likely that there will be a betrayal or misunderstanding or some anger and disappointments along the way. And during the whole repeal process of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, I was very involved in that. I had my poor family and friends, these guys can attest to, they saw another email. If you can, send an email or tweet or phone call this congressman. They're we might be able to get them over to switch to our side. And it took, there was many times during the fall, I think of 2010, that it didn't look like it was going to happen. And at some points, I was really distraught about that. And then I would just get up the next morning, I'd go at it again. I'd say, okay, I'm going to call this congressman, I'm going to do this. And in the end, we got it passed. And it passed actually by a lot. And it was the first time, I think, besides the Ryan White Act, that gay people had ever been protected by both houses of Congress as well as the president. It was a really amazing moment. And if you've looked at the blogs in the last couple of days, you have the Secretary of Defense now celebrating June as LGBT Pride Month. It's amazing. It's really amazing what sustained action and determination will do. So as for November, I'm not sure what will happen, but I invite you to do something. Risk opening your heart, being more mindful, practicing right understanding, and doing something. And I suggest, doing something small. Start small, but small things add up. Volunteer, give money, give $10, have a meaningful dialogue with a relative. Or come march with me next Sunday with the Obama contingent. I'd just like to leave you with this thought. I can't promise you that we're gonna win, but I can tell you we're gonna have fun and be touched and motivated by our community and feel alive and vital. And knowing that we're part of the solution. That's all I want to say. So I'm going to open it up to questions. Thank you for your attention. And just, by the way, before I forget, if you're interested in following me in my political life, my blog, just Google Very Joe and Bullish. It'll come up. And yeah, so I'd like to hear from you guys. Please.
Your family sounds fascinating. Are there any Republicans in the family?
There are.
And can you explain that, or how do you deal with that?
I pray for them every night. Well, part of it is actually, it's interesting. Like the Republicans that I have in my family are more fiscal Republicans. They support me and my brother. I actually don't have a lot of things with them. One of my uncles who does listen to Rush Limbaugh, I've called him on it, and he realizes how hateful all that speech is. So it's been a good thing. I have another uncle who used to be a strong Democrat, was a Bobby Kennedy supporter, and he's turned into this arch conservative. And it's just amazing to me. How do you go from this to that? And one of the things I realized with him is he's really afraid of the world. He's afraid bad things are always happening. He's a neighborhood vigilante and everything. Hey, I like fiscal conservatism. So I understand. We relate on that grounds, but we don't talk about politics anymore.
Yeah, I appreciate what you've said in terms of temperaments of conservatives and liberals. I guess the problem I'm having in these times is that the elephant in the room is that it's not so much that people have different opinions, it's just that it seems like there's a lot of demonization and there's no civil discourse. And I guess in my own experience, what's been kind of freaking me out is that, I grew up in a family of Democrats, and a number of my sisters have married Republicans. And up until the election of Obama, we were able to discuss politics, and we avoid it like the plague. And I really feel that in some ways, it's really affected my relationship with my family, and it's really odd. And I don't think it's just a reflection of my family. I think it's a reflection of what's going on in America today, that it's impossible for people to talk. I think there's just so much demonization going on. And so the real issue for me is, you were talking about what happened during the Second World War, the demonization of Jews and other people. And so what do we do? How do we have equanimity or empathy for people whose political views really are out to destroy people and to harm them? I mean, how do you give them political space, but at the same time call them on what they're doing? And also this idea of fair and balance, that everything is equal, is really reprehensible. And so I'm not trying to be angry about it. I really try to have some equanimity about it, but I think we're kind of putting our heads in the sand if we try to just ignore that. It's like your friend was willing to discuss with you, to engage you, even though his political views were different. What do we do about those people who don't want to engage? They just want to hit us over the head. How do we protect ourselves and other people?
That's a good question. Does anyone else have experiences of that? Yeah.
I do. And, I went down to Lima, and I have a very big family down there. And one especially I really love. He's just a great guy. And we have very different views. And he likes me, and I'm gay, and his brother is gay. And I just don't go head to head with him politically. There's so much about him that I love. I don't want to. It's not important to me to bring up that subject and to have it out. It really has no importance to me. I know we have wild. He's a cultural conservative as well as a social conservative.
Yeah.
But what is thought about gays is, I can only assume, is okay, because I know he loves me, I know he loves his cousin, and somewhere in his head it probably won't compute for him to be homophobic. But I really decided when I go down there to leave him alone, and if it seems prickly with some of the others, then to just leave it alone, because there's so much about this that I love. Trying to iron things out in that arena is not a big thing for me.
Right. Well, there's a couple of things I want to say about this. Is I think it's true. I mean, we all, I think it's safe to say we all grew up in an era where there was fewer news outlets. So when we watched the news, we watched ABC or Walter Cronkite. So we all had the same news sources, right? Now you have a zillion different news sources, talk radio and all this stuff. So it's harder to agree on what are the facts the objective facts. I mean, so that's a challenge when people don't agree on the objective facts, and it's one of the challenges of this day and age. Secondly, as a strategist, as a political strategist, the people in the far extremes who have their heads, who are very doubled down on their fear or hatred, we're probably never going to change them. But I hold out the possibility. Politically, the people we need to win are the ones in the middle. There's always this group in the middle that are open to change. And like during the Prop 8 election, we lost the people in the middle for a variety of reasons. But probably if that election was to take place today, we'd probably win. So politically, we need to go after the people in the middle and target them with our messaging and our dialogue and everything. Just like the African American perspective on same-sex marriage has changed radically since 2008, and now with Obama coming out, I think it's 68% of African Americans, according to the latest poll, are in favor of gay marriage. It was 20 points less than that 4 years ago. So that's a difference. One other thing, just quick thing, dialogue is important. Even in your case with your cousin, it's important because staying in dialogue. I think you all know Dan Savage. He's challenged the head of the National Organization for Marriage to come over to his house and have a dialogue about the Bible. And they're going to record this. The more we have dialogue, and one of the things that Harvey said is, we just keep talking and we just keep being ourselves, and we will win the argument, because we're not about fear and hatred. Especially on the gay issue, we're about love. We're about just being part of the human family. Tom.
So, kind of along those lines, I've heard a number of writers say that, as a practice, they seek out opposing views. They listen to stations that don't carry their view. They read blogs and magazines that they carry the opposite view, to try and reach out and break down those barriers even within their own mind.
Wow.
So, but my challenge and my question for you is, so I think NPR does a good job of quiet, thoughtful discourse that isn't just sound bites, but it's the liberal point of view generally. NPR and public radio and all, KQED locally. What would you recommend as sources to reach out and find that sort of thoughtful discourse on the other side? It's not Rush Limbaugh, it's not Fox News. What would you recommend we look to for that if we want to engage? Yeah,
well, personally, I there's a show on Saturdays and Sundays with Chris Hayes called Up, and he's a liberal and writes for the New Republic, I think, but he usually has 2 or 3. It's on MSNBC. He has usually 2 or 3, I think, very thoughtful GOP commentators or conservative commentators on that. I also like Charlie Rose because he has a mixture of people on that show. I also, a little bit closer to home, Andrew Sullivan, who's a gay conservative, he's got a very popular blog, and I think it's one of the most interesting places intellectually, and he talks about gay-related issues, but he's a public intellectual, and his blog, The Daily Beast, I think it's called The Daily Dish, which is now hosted at The Daily Beast. It's a really great blog, and he presents all sides, and it's a really rich place, and I go there usually twice a day.
I know for myself it's really important for me to remind myself that we've been here before. 30 years ago, it was the same conversation, but it was about race. And it was perhaps even worse. And I try to remember my parents in that environment and how they interacted with their friends and our relatives in terms of having a civil conversation about providing equal opportunity for African Americans, and we survived that. And by and large, a lot of that conversation, of course, indeed, much of it's still going on. The relationship with our president is a reminder that that's unquestionably not something that's gone from our culture. But we have gone forward, and for myself at any rate, it's really important for me to remind myself that even though there are members of my family and close friends that I cannot have certain conversations with, that history's on our side.
Yeah, and love's on our side too. And
Yeah.
I think within my lifetime, I'm 52 years old now, I think we will see at least full legal equality in the United States. I think it'll be beyond my lifetime to see that around the world, but that is, it's I love being just part of that movement, But I think that's right. And some would argue the LGBT movement's moved faster than any other civil rights movement. There was a great article in Slate magazine about this very subject. And it's one of the things that we've succeeded that others haven't is we've held this moral view that we're equal. I mean, just flat out, forget about all the other things. We're equal and entitled to the same sort of, we're all children of God. We all have, as the Buddha would say, we all have basic goodness. And I have a dialogue with someone who's anti-gay in some way or anti-gay marriage, but I never forget that. I'm like, and I don't care what the Dalai Lama says about gay people or anyone. That I know. That is like, we all have that basic goodness, and that implies that we're all equal, I think.
I think we're going to have to stop right there.
Okay.
Will you be here for the social hour?
I will be here for the social hour.
That's great. Thank you so much for today, Joe.
Thank you, guys.
So, announcements from our host.
Yeah, my name is Tage. I'm the host today. There's some treats on the table. There's hot water for tea. If you use a tea mug, just wash it out in hot soapy water, which is in the sink. There's a sign-up list on Credenza for our mailing list or in our newsletter. There's a group of people that go out to lunch around 12:30. They meet at the door. And I will be going around with the Donna Bowl. The suggested donation is $5 to $7.
Thank you, Tage. Jerry?
Thanks, Joe, for coming today. It was a pleasure. I learned a lot today. I was like, oh, wow, didn't realize all your blog and all that stuff, so thank you. Plus, it was so funny because when I booked you a long time ago, and like everything was going really well at the bottom, I go, I don't know what Joe's going to talk about, and then timely. So thank you. Next week we're doing open discussions, break into groups, and whoever the leaders will give us a topic.
Jim?
Oh, you're doing a special program, aren't you, next week?
Michael and I are going to do a co-thing for open discussion next week. Yes. We have to work on it. We will. How about any other announcements? No? Okay, let's go ahead and stand for the dedication of the merit.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you, gentlemen, for today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.